Snafud is a podcast that contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Snafud, where the situation's normal, all fucked up. This is the podcast where we tell you stories of, well, true crime, true mystery, and truly fucked up shit that happens every single day, and then we just forget about it. So, we decide to remind you. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Corey, and welcome back, guys. This is part 3 of our little epic of Fatty Arbuckle and the scandal that changed Hollywood. So thanks for sticking with us.
Yep, and just to remind everybody, like, this is one of those podcasts that's really important to me. It literally got me into podcasting. And sometimes when we get into stories that get a little too real or scary or gruesome, we make crude jokes or get a little sarcastic just to get through it. It's, it's a response to just, because they're not always the easiest stories.
It's just a coping mechanism to get through the darkness that's in these stories, because life is fucking terrible.
Yeah, and so please don't mistake the fact that I said, after listening to myself edit everything, I realized I sound a little callous, and that's not really how I felt. And, just know that I do feel strongly, and I'll try a little bit better not to be such a sarcastic butthole, but it's hard. It's so hard, Corey.
I know, this one, I don't know. I think maybe it's just the amount of times I've heard the story from you and we've worked on it, that this one I'm treating differently than anything else that we've done. Plus also sometimes when you think a 23-year-old thinks he's a werewolf, that's kind of an easy, low-hanging fruit. This one,
I know.
Not so much.
So where we guys last left you off was we had told you that the party had happened. Roscoe, Fatty Arbuckle, and Virginia Rappe were in a room together in the hotel. And within 30 minutes, something happened so drastically to her that she either became incredibly sick or hurt. But at the end of the night, she was carried away into a separate hotel room. She stayed 3 days there before she was moved to a sanitarium. And then doctors realized she was so sick, possibly with a bladder infection or a fallopian tube rip, that they were so worried that she wouldn't even survive surgery that they couldn't even do that, and she ended up passing away. She was moved back to Los Angeles by her ex-fiance and placed into her final resting place, and that's kind of where we left you off.
So, we have her fiance who is sending flowers, paying for the funeral, paying for the burial, and doing his damned best to get someone to prosecute Fatty. But it's kind of very hard to go after these big names. Americans, we love our goddamn heroes. And sometimes these celebrities, even nowadays, you look at it, become heroes, and it's kind of hard to go after them.
Well, he also has the protection of the studios. He's a major moneymaker.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to go after these people.
Yeah.
Because they are ingrained in every aspect of our lives. But, just for a quick question, if you're going to be told that the person that you were hanging out with a few weeks ago had died, who do you think should be the first person to tell you that happened?
I guess someone at the party or, like, the police? Yeah,
you'd feel like someone that has, the direct information from the hospital, from where Virginia had passed away.
Yeah.
Nope. So, Fatty gets told that Virginia Rappe dies by some Los Angeles news reporter on Friday evening, September 9th. The weekend after they had the Labor Day weekend. When Fatty's speaking to the reporter, he actually denies that he did anything to hurt her. He told the news reporter that there were no closed doors at the whole party and that he was never alone in a locked room in 1219 with Virginia Rappe. According to the Evening News, the police had received 2 affidavits.
And those were the 2 that we told you guys in the last episode. But in case you're going from latest to earliest, we'll go ahead and catch you guys up. So here are the 2 affidavits.
Yeah. So the affidavits from Blake are, quote, or I'm going to paraphrase. I'm really shit at quoting directly. About a half an hour later, Mrs. Delma had tried to get into the room, but the door was locked. She banged on the door and Fatty came out. As he opened the door, we heard Mrs. Rappe moaning and crying, screaming, "I'm dying, I am dying." Fatty looks out when he comes out. He sits down. He tells us, go in, get her dressed, and bring her back to the palace. She makes way too much noise. So, from Alice, who is wingmanning Virginia and has no reason to really lie in this situation, is painting Fatty as being just a shit human being at this point.
Okay, well, in turn, the only other affidavit that we read you guys is Roscoe Arbuckle's affidavit himself. So all he said was, we sat around and had some drinks, and pretty soon Miss Rappe became hysterical and complained she could not breathe and began to tear her clothes off. At no time was I alone with Miss Rappe. There were half a dozen people in the room at all time. So those were the two affidavits that the police did come to his door, but not before the reporter told him what was going to go on. So you got one girl back in San Francisco talking about how he literally was alone in a room and people were banging on the door and they couldn't get in. And then he basically said she makes too much noise, take her away. And here he's saying, I was never even alone with her. I was with half a dozen people. She drank too much and got hysterical. Women, And he has a responsibility now to cover his ass and cover the studio's ass because he's messed up big. So Arbuckle ends up calling Joseph Schneck, the executive of his production company. And then he has a midnight meeting with 3 potential witnesses. So Lowell Sherman, Fred Fishback, and Al Simnacker are all at this meeting with the producers.
And it's not just a meeting, but it's a midnight meeting.
So they're meeting at Sid Groman's office at Groman's $1 Million Theater so that they can sit down and, talk it out and agree upon what actually happened, which is interesting that Virginia's fellow friend Al is here. So in my terms, wouldn't that be something akin to witness tampering?
I mean, yeah, but remember, right away, before Fatty left, he and Al were sitting down and they both agreed that, Virginia had just drank too much, it's fine.
It's literally from this meeting that he calls up to San Francisco and makes his statement to the San Francisco detectives. So it was formulated. Yeah. It took a meeting at midnight for everyone to come up with this short statement that he called over. He also stated that those who were saying that he was responsible for doing this to Virginia was saying it because of ill feelings towards him. So somebody was out to get him. It wasn't really something he had done. At 3 a.m. in the morning of September 10th, Roscoe Arbuckle ends up driving his Pierce Arrow once more to San Francisco. Along with his manager, Lou Anger. He's got his attorney, Frank Dominguez, and Joe Bordeaux. And he's also got a friend who worked for him. So Lowell Sherman and Al Simnacker also end up following in another car with Fred Fishback. So you got all these big name guys who have an agreed upon story driving up to San Francisco. It's a 14-hour drive, so they end up pulling over for breakfast early in the morning. And while they're in Fresno, Arbuckle ends up making another statement to a reporter that he had never even met Rappe before Monday. So he's not really, he's too confused. He's got too many people talking to him now. He's not keeping his story straight.
So his attorney, Frank, was regarded as one of the premier attorneys in LA, and he enlisted Charles Brennan. So his attorney, Frank Dominguez, was one of the premier attorneys in LA, and he had actually enlisted Charles Brennan from San Francisco. Arbuckle and Dominguez had met outside of the Palace Hotel at about 8:30 in the afternoon that Saturday, and they went into San Francisco's Hall of Justice. This is where they met Brennan, and he carried a briefcase with $5,000 in it so that Arbuckle could make bail.
This is $5,000 in 1921. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But they're pretty damn confident that they can just strut in the door with a briefcase full of money and they're going to walk back out.
Yeah, and that's what they're hoping for. Arbuckle gave another statement that contradicted his original statement. He's saying that, I've known Miss Rappe for the last 5 years. Later he would say he was misquoted. So does he know her? Does he not? He's going both ways on this fucking statement of if he knows this damn girl. It's probably the simplest question he's being asked this whole goddamn time.
And he can't even answer that one straight.
Yeah. So, he continues on with his statement, saying that after a few drinks, Virginia becomes hysterical, and she starts complaining about difficulty breathing, and, how it's just super hot, and she starts kind of pulling clothes off herself. But then he also continues saying that some of the women of the party helped her disrobe, and they put her in a bathtub to get her to kind of cool down. And, when that wasn't working, he steps in, he calls the hotel manager, saying that they need some assistance up here, and then he continues on saying that I was never alone with Miss Rappe at any point.
Yeah, but that's still a completely different story. I mean, first of all, he's saying, oh, it's never alone, but we didn't hear that she was fucking naked. Like, yeah, she was ripping and tearing at her clothes, but nobody said, oh, women took her clothes off and laid her in a bathtub.
Yeah.
Like, this, now things are starting to come out, and I don't, like, with all the people coaching him, I don't think he's knowing enough to shut the hell up.
As it continues on, Arbuckle and his attorneys are ushered into a room with the district attorneys. Milton Urey and Isidore Golden. Names we'll probably never say again, but let's get them.
Isidore? Isidore.
I don't know.
Look your baby in the eye and stop naming it stupid shit.
It looks like a name out of Lord of the Rings, so we're going to call him Mr. Golden, or we're going to call them Golden. I don't even know if they're Mr. or Mrs. at that point. Anyway, the two state prosecutors are then informed of the sworn affidavits from Alice Blake, Zay Provost, and Maud Delmont. So these two, Alice Blake and Zay Provost, are two chorus girls, and then Maud is the woman who actually came with Virginia up to San Francisco from LA and, stuck by her side for most of this time. Dominguez has instructed Arbuckle to only admit to prohibition violations and not to answer anything from assistant DAs and detectives. That made the DA office very angry, but, Dominguez told them that Roscoe Arbuckle not even admit that his name is Roscoe Arbuckle. So they're just being fucking shady as hell.
They're just like slick, gross lawyers. Like, he won't even admit his own name.
Yeah. After 3 hours in the room, they take a break, and shortly after, Arbuckle's arrested for the murder of Virginia Rappe. And the charge that Arbuckle violated Section 189 of the California Penal Code, which defines first-degree murder to include killing, which is committed in the preparation or attempting to penetrate rape. Essentially, he caused murder by rape, is what the state is saying, and that's why they're arresting him. So they're not bailing, no, do not pass go, do not collect $200, you're stuck in. And with that, he's taking his mug shots, and he's got that gorgeous suit and a bow tie on, but he's unsmiling. He's inmate 32052.
He looks like a giant butterball, by the way. Like, I know it's hard to tell.
That's the worst word ever. Oh my god.
It's not. It's what he reminds me of. He looks like a giant butterball turkey.
You
like,
use
just
it
bopping
so
around.
many times. And I just can't stand it.
He's got these big icy blue eyes, and he's blonde. It's hard to tell in the pictures because they're all black and white. But he's just like this blonde, giant, fat baby man. And
yeah, 5'8" and 266 pounds.
It's butterball.
I can't stand it when you say that every single time you do. I couldn't handle it.
Moist butterball.
Stop it. I will quit this podcast. Arbuckle made no post-arrest statement. The captain of detectives, Duncan Matheson, said, "This woman, without a doubt, died as a result of an attack by Arbuckle. That makes it first-degree murder without a doubt. We don't feel that a man like Fatty Arbuckle can pull stuff like this in San Francisco and get away with it."
Good for him. It's a lot stronger saying than what we have people in California saying right now.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. They walked in with $5,000 in a briefcase. Like, they were sure as shit gonna walk right back out, and they didn't. Like, kudos to the city of San Francisco for upholding their laws and protecting women. Unfortunately, at this time, those laws had just come up because of a recent, amount of rapes happening in San Francisco.
Yeah.
This just happened to be one of the most famous ones that occurred. Luckily, by then, there's already these laws, but that doesn't bring Virginia back. So, that Sunday, the next day, there's a huge explosion throughout all of the communities in the United States because here movies are one of the suddenly brand new things all throughout the country. You pay a nickel or a dime and you get to go spend a couple of hours in an air-conditioned room. You're gonna do it. Everybody's poor, so you're sitting in this air-conditioned room seeing the same faces over and over and over again. You just get a little infatuated with them, the same way we do sometimes with TV personalities. Right now, a TV personality can go out there and make a podcast or a movie or whatever, and you're going to follow it because you just know who they are. So this is how people feel about Fatty Arbuckle. This is how they feel about Virginia Rappe, and all they know right now is that a beautiful young lady has died, according to this fat guy that sometimes is portrayed as a womanizer on film.
Yeah.
So it's not looking good. And so preachers are literally standing at the pulpit on Sunday screaming angry sermons about the movie theaters and, how they could degrade our community with this filth, with this man who kills women. his movies begin to be pulled from theaters. Like, people are turning on Fatty Arbuckle, who used to be everybody's favorite fat guy to laugh at.
Yeah.
It's this time that Roscoe Arbuckle's sitting in jail and feeling pretty freaking miserable about himself, that he's overheard saying, possibly, quote, "I'm through with the booze. Forever. No more."
Oh, yeah, that's gonna stick. Anytime anyone says that, it never sticks.
Ready? Big surprise. You ready? Drum roll. Da 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 da. He's not.
Yeah.
He's totally not over that. So anyways, so that Sunday, depositions were taken from witnesses by investigators. Los Angeles police, on a hunch from the San Francisco counterpart, so basically San Francisco called up over to LA and was like, "Hey, we know this. Go talk to this guy." They go over to the Hollywood home of Al Simnacher, and they find possessions of a woman's silk shirt, and it's missing 3 of the 5 buttons that should be on it, and they also find a woman's tattered silk underwear.
That's a weird thing to have.
It is super fucking weird, and it's weirder because when they ask him why they have it, he's like, "It's for my machine."
Machine? What machine is eating that?
It's actually for him to, like, clean his car, but cars are so new. He's like, "It's for my machine. I'll clean it with silk rags." So...
I don't like it.
So, yeah, he's got a ripped shirt. It's got missing buttons. So basically, he has evidence hidden in his home. So he just tells them, like, "Look, I found it on the room of the floor of 1219. And yeah, I took it to clean my machine, my car. The rest of the outfit was in the closet in the St. Francis Hotel with Maud Delmont." So suddenly, it's not such a great wing woman and a best friend. Suddenly, it's a guy who's going to conspiratorial meetings and a woman that has the rest of her clothing.
Yeah.
So they're holding on to that. So that evening, when Roscoe Arbuckle meets with his lawyers, he literally asks them to get him better accommodations. Like, this is crap. Does that sound familiar too?
Oh, yeah. Anyone in modern day right now.
So he's denied, of course.
Good.
And he is allowed to pick a cellmate. So he can either have his own room or he can pick a cellmate. And he says he'd rather not be lonely. So he picks a guy named Fred Martin. So 9 o'clock on Monday morning, September 12th, Roscoe's joined in line of inmates waiting for their turn in court. So the district attorney for San Francisco, Matthew Brady, took over the case from his underling as he'd actually been out of town over the weekend when this all kind of went down. He had only taken DA since January 1920, so he'd barely been in the position for about a year.
Yeah.
And he's speculated to want to run for the San Francisco mayor or even governor, so he's really trying to kick up his career fast. He needs a big case like this. It looks good.
Yeah.
Brady had an affidavit from Maud Delmont that was proving to be his strongest testimony against Arbuckle, and it says, "Miss Rappe went to the bathroom off room 1219. Leaving the rest of the party in room 1220. And when she came out, Arbuckle took hold of her and said, quote, 'I have been trying to get you for 5 years,' unquote. After he took hold of her and made this remark, he then closed the door of room 1219, leading into room 1220, leaving the rest of the party in room 1220. I felt anxious about Miss Rappe when she did not return to our party. I became very anxious about her. I called to her several times, but received no answer, then kicked against the door with the heel of my shoe at least a dozen times during the next hour. When I told her what I had done afterwards, she said she must have been unconscious immediately after he locked the door, otherwise she must have had heard me. After an hour's wait, I became alarmed, took down the receiver to the telephone, and called for help from the office. Mr. Boyle, the assistant manager, came up. When Arbuckle heard our conversation, he opened the door, standing in his pajamas, wet with perspiration, and had Miss Rappe's Panama hat on his head.
That's weird.
The bed where she lay was saturated wet, and she was semi-conscious and tearing her clothes. She tore off the cuff of her white silk shirtwaist and threw them on the floor, screaming, "He did it! I know he did it! I have been hurt! I am dying!" This was said in the presence of Arbuckle. Delmont went on to describe Virginia's pain-listing neck, left leg, and abdomen. And she described, quote, monkey bites, unquote, on the neck about large marks on her right arm and left leg.
I've never heard the term monkey bites forever, but...
On the neck and about large marks on her right arm and left leg.
I don't get that at all, but...
So, where do we go different this time? This time, it's not half an hour, it's an hour that she's banging on the door. This time, Virginia is fine when she goes into the room, but only starts tearing off her clothes once the door opens up and he leaves.
Yeah.
You know, like, the story's been changing up, but this is quite a testimony to be had against Roscoe Arbuckle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty damning.
This one does seem it, but with all the other changes and other stories that don't add up to this one, who knows?
Well, to end it all, she claimed that early Tuesday morning, Virginia had told her everything. She said, "Maud, Roscoe should be at my bedside every minute and see how I am suffering for what he did to me." So, in her own words, according to Maud, Virginia said, "He's killing me. He killed me. He should be here right now."
Yeah. The morning of September 12th, Delmont walked into the courthouse, making a scene about not wanting to face Arbuckle and how she would if she must. At 11 a.m...
Oh, she's so fucking strong.
Yeah,
You're so strong, Maud. Sorry.
At 11...
I have feelings.
At 11 a.m., Delmont was beside the DA Brady and swore under oath to the accuracy of her prior given testimony. Then she nearly fainted and then became hysterical and was led out of the courtroom.
Oh my god.
You know, she's just playing this up from the beginning, and just that's what we're dealing with. It's Hollywood elite and people who want to be Hollywood elite. At 11:30 a.m., Arbuckle comes into the courtroom, and he was called to the bench and read Delmont's complaint. At 2 p.m., the coroner's inquest into the death began at the county morgue, also in the Hall of Justice. So the jury for the coroner's inquest used to determine the manner of death. The jury of citizens sits in judgment and can ask questions of witnesses, although most questioning is done by the attorneys and the coroner.
Coroner.
The coroner was Dr. Thomas Ledland, and he chose to allow the prosecution to delay Delmont's testimony for a day and told the defense to call her to the stand the next day. The first witness was the Hotel St. Francis assistant manager, Harry Boyle, who testified to being called up to room 219, carrying Rappe to 1227 with Arbuckle, and calling Dr. Olav Carbo, one of the doctors who showed up.
The first one.
Who administered, morphine and said, "Oh, she's drunk." And actually, Dr. Carbo was the second witness. Doctors Rumswell and Ophuls spoke about the first post-mortem examination.
Say that 5 times fast.
I'm not going to say that ever again. They said they saw no evidence of violence other than the lacerated bladder.
Now, with the 2 different juries that are happening and the coroner's report, we want to tell you guys what they're seeing in the autopsy. So Dr. William Ophuls, the Dean of Medicine at Stanford University, was called by Dr. Rumswell, who was taking care of Virginia at the time. He, assisted by Rumswell and nurse Grace Halston, would then perform the first autopsy on Virginia's body at the sanitarium. There was no autopsy room, so they did the procedure in the operating room. He reviewed the body and found no signs of sexual assault. He noted the bruises on her upper right arm and 2 on her thighs were visible, and he proceeded forward with the autopsy. Blood had congested in Virginia's lower abdomen. The lower intestines were virtually empty and appeared normal, and one of her lower lobes in her lung was congested, but Virginia had been a known smoker like most people in the 1920s.
Oh yeah, everyone was.
And so there was really nothing unusual about her lungs. The peritoneum was inflamed. The 2 doctors inspected the ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, rectum, and bladder, and they saw that no operations had ever preceded death. So Virginia had never had an operation before she died. No surgeries. Her bladder was unusually small, and in an inflamed area, there was a hole in the outer wall 1/8 of an inch in diameter. And inside the bladder was clotted with blood, and there was a tear in the inner wall as well, about 3/4 of an inch long. So just real quick, I want to break this down. That was a lot of words.
Yeah.
A lot of medical jargon. Sometimes that's not
body stuff, so I zoned out.
Yeah, he was freaking out a little bit quietly. It was nice. So basically what they're saying is days after she's been sick, hurt in the room, and finally taken over to the sanitarium and she dies, finally they do an autopsy and they suspect, well, we don't see any sexual assault because we don't see any semen.
But it's been days.
It's been days. I'm just pointing that out. It's just like, look, she's been taken care of by nurses. Like, can you really prove sexual assault unless they took a rape kit, which I don't even think existed at the time.
They barely exist now.
They weren't looking for that before, so they don't care. He is noting that there are bruises on her upper right arm, and then there's also bruises on her thigh. He also says that there is blood that's congested and pooled in her abdomen. So that consists of why there's holes in her bladder. So when they did the catheter so that they can get urine out when she didn't pee, and they didn't get any urine, they got like a very little bit, but they also got the dark tinged blood. That's because she had a hole in her bladder and it's just been piling up into her stomach. Well, not even into her stomach, just in the open cavity.
No.
Okay. So when they administered the drip rectally, and then a couple hours later they checked on her and her abdomen was distended, it was because there was a hole in her bladder and then they were pumping fluids into her system. It was like a pouch with a hole in it. It just flowed right back out.
That's disgusting.
So the doctors are the one that did that to her and made it worse. All right, so cause of death, a ruptured bladder. Contributory, acute peritonitis, meaning she has an infection of her bladder, which is acute peritonitis, like it's just inflamed in her bladder, and the cause of death is the rupture of that bladder, and then it's signed off by Dr. Awfuls. So then they also do a second autopsy, because the original autopsy, when they called in and said she had passed away, they were told that the town, like San Francisco's coroner, was not available. It's a weekend holiday, right? Like everybody's been on vacation for a week, I guess.
So the lesson here is don't die on holidays.
Don't die ever. So there's a second autopsy, but it's performed on the same day and it's done at 8:15 p.m. by San Francisco autopsy surgeon Dr. Shelby Strange. So he noted 11 bruises, actually. There was the right upper arm, the torso, and the legs. This is important because she also had puncture marks on her left arm. So that's where those bruises would have come from. Remember all the morphine shots? Remember her going into the hospital? Remember them probably trying to stick IVs and them not probably finding a vein and deciding they should just give it to her rectally? This is where some of those bruises are coming from. It's not from that night. However, there's more bruises on her body than had been noted before. And these, it's been only a couple days. If someone manhandles you, there will be bruising. And there's bruising on her torso and legs. When they observed the bladder and the female organs under a microscope, Strange noticed a chronic inflammation of the tissues around the ruptured bladder. So this was, like, again, Virginia always had stomach problems. And so it shows that comes from a chronic inflammation of her bladder. He did send the stomach off to get further analysis to see what was inside her. Did she eat something that made her sick? Was she poisoned?
Yeah.
It's just really typical.
Yeah, it's a standard procedure.
Dr. Strange's conclusion was the same as Dr. Awful's, but he reversed the cause and the contributory factors. So the cause of death was acute peritonitis, so the common inflammation, and it was resulting from a rupture of the bladder. So he believes that the tear in Virginia's bladder was caused by, quote, some external force.
And a gigantic man might be an external force.
Yes, it is.
So after everyone had gone through these autopsies, 2 more doctors speak about their consultations with Rumswell at the sanitarium prior to Rappe's death. And then the proceedings had adjourned for the day. At 7:30 that Monday evening, the grand jury hearing commenced. A grand jury is, void of reporters, observers, the DA, the defendant, or a judge. Questioning is done by prosecutors and the jurors with the sole purpose of deciding if there is sufficient evidence for trial.
So there's, nobody leading you, kind of.
Right. There's no one leading, and a jury needs to... There's no judge that's going to be saying, this is what's going to happen. The jury needs to say, hey, we think this needs to go to prosecution.
But also, that's super friggin' late at night. That's the weird thing about, court and court cases, because I'm not so familiar with them, is that they keep these people for so long and so many crazy hours to listen to horrendous stories.
Yeah, that's why jury duty is the worst.
It doesn't, yeah, and it is, and it doesn't seem like it works well because people get frustrated and just, okay, anyways.
Yeah, and the grand jury wasn't a quick thing. For hours, witnesses are being brought in. The first witness was, Maud Delmont, who was questioned for more than an hour and then brought back later again for about 15 minutes.
I mean, she's got the juiciest one.
She's leaning on a police officer as she walked out because she needed assistance due to the shock induced by the death of her friend.
Oh, clutching them pearls.
The girl she knew for, 72 hours, before the situation happened. Obviously, we can't really take away what Maud had done, but... So, and quickly a list of other witnesses were Al Sedneker, Zay Provost, one of the other chorus girls, Dr. Rumswell, Dr. Olfus, Dr. Rixford, and the surgeon from the coroner's office, Dr. Shelby Strange. So, like we're saying, this is being a long night. Starts at 7:30 and is not until 1 a.m. when Arbuckle is brought in.
I feel like that's not fair, not to, the jury, not even to Arbuckle, but how can you make a good decision at 1 a.m.?
But, yeah, it does seem like garbage. And the jury foreman's asking Arbuckle to describe the events of the evening, or how he can recount them. And Arbuckle answers that, my attorneys have advised me to say nothing at this time. Arbuckle's in this courtroom for about 3 minutes before he's gone. The prosecution leaves the room and leaves the jury to deliberate.
Oh, damn. Sorry, I'm running around the room. Damn.
So...
No, but seriously, that's a good lawyer. That's not what you want to hear from someone, and that's not how you want to fix, a trial, but we're Americans, we like to sue, and that's exactly what your lawyer's supposed to say is, look, you have nothing, and we're going to say nothing. Unfortunately, the whole freaking drive there, Arbuckle's been saying shit the whole way.
Yeah. The jury deliberates for another hour, and around 2 a.m., the foreman announced the jury had decided against voting on the matter and instead wished to give D.A. Brady more time to secure information that they wanted to hear. Eventually, what they do is they put Zay Provost under home surveillance because she had changed her story completely before the grand jury, and they're going to decide if they're going to arrest and charge her with perjury depending on how events would play out. So they want to keep an eye on her.
So what you're saying is she said something different to the cops, and then they go
and then said something to the jury when she's under oath. Okay. So her story changes. At around 2 a.m., the foreman announced that the jury had decided against voting on the matter, and instead...
Why?
What happened is Alice Blake has gone missing. One of the chorus girls and one of the key witnesses here.
What do you mean she's gone missing?
She's gone missing. Just disappears in the ether, and they can't find her.
What the fuck?
So they put Zay Provost, one of the other chorus girls, on home surveillance because her story's changed before it came to the jury compared to what it was beforehand.
And her best, the friend that brought her there is missing. So
yeah.
Holy shit.
So they need to get these other witnesses in before a grand jury to see if it's going to go to trial. Tuesday morning, this is the 13th, Delmont took the stand at the coroner's inquest. She wore all black.
We're all in mourning.
And the press is building her up to be this beauty consultant, as she takes the stage. Or, for her, in her mind, it's definitely a stage.
That's what she's told
the
everyone.
Stand.
I'm a beauty artist.
Arbuckle's staring at her throughout the entire testimony, only looking away to make some whispers to his attorneys.
That's fucking gross.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the best scenario to be under. But while she's on the stand, her statement stays very, very close to her original statement. However, one key difference is that she doesn't state that Arbuckle held or dragged Virginia into the other room. So that bit changes, and it kind of puts Arbuckle in a little bit more favorable light. And also the fact that another thing changes in this goddamn court case.
Well, here's an awkward thing from an outsider's view. Last we told you, Virginia walked into a bathroom and could not get in because Maud was in that bathroom.
Yeah.
She leaves and goes into another room, and yet Maud has a testimony about watching Arbuckle follow her and lock the door.
Well, I think Arbuckle went in a few minutes later, so maybe it could happen. I mean,
maybe they came piling out of the bathroom right then, but why would you tell her to go away if you're just going to follow her out? Here's the thing. Nobody's being honest. I'm going to just say it from the outset. I know our listeners can understand that, but nobody's being honest. Have you not seen that every testimony has changed? There's a little manipulation every time.
Yeah,
it's 30 minutes, and it's an hour. I was never alone. He was gone, this amount of time. Like, yet you were in a bathroom. Like, why would you know when they went in there?
Yeah.
So the fact is like everything that was going on at this party was illegal, but that makes the storytelling so much more different because everyone's trying to cover their ass in different aspects.
And that's why, we're taking our time to go through these court cases because it's just a freaking rodeo and it's like herding cats to get two stories to agree with each other. And Delma, she continues on with her story and at one point states that right from the start, Virginia had accused Roscoe. She always called him that. She didn't want anyone to tell Lerman, her fiancé, about it. Delma claimed that Virginia had been saying, I am hurt, I am dying, he did it. Her testimony just is very erratic. She had to be told multiple times from the coroner to consider her statements.
But this guy is literally just, like, taking the time to set her aside and be like, you need to think about what you're saying.
Yeah, he's even taking the time to give her the benefit of the doubt and tries to console her. And he's trying to coach her and let her know, like, it's possible that, witnesses kind of go into, like, a sort of sleep or shock. They can kind of just answer yes when they're on the stand. Like, she needs to be aware and awake and kind of just brings her back into, you're in a courtroom, focus.
Which I thought was, like, a really weird thing to say. But then when I thought about it, don't you ever get like that when you're so nervous about something or you're so excited about something you almost get like tunnel vision?
Yeah.
Like you almost feel like you're going to sleep or like everything around you is not quite happening.
Yeah, and
he's being honest with her again.
Yeah. She assures him that she's fine, had a hypodermic beforehand, so she's caffeinated and, all sorts of drugged out for this. And the jury continues on. They ask her, why she's wearing a pair of Lowell Sherman's pajamas.
Ooh, awkward.
And she doesn't go right back to, I was in the bathroom with this man. No. She goes in saying that she got warm from dancing.
Right?
So let's throw pajamas
make a whore
on.
Out of yourself. Like, she just got hot, remember?
Yeah, but I always think of pajamas as something you put on when it's cold. Otherwise, you'd sleep in less, but whatever.
1920s clothing is still a lot of clothing, I think.
I guess I have no idea how the 1920s worked. She had agreed, though, to her probation, or to her prohibition violations.
Uh-oh. That's still bad.
And confessed to drinking on the drive from L.A. When she asked what she did after the doctor came to 1219, she said that he was the hotel detective and that he was very nice and that they were back into the room together and drank all the gin and orange juice.
So she literally took the hotel detective. Like, he came up and was like, drunkenness! And she was like, yes! And then they drank more.
Yeah, and, she's saying that Virginia had 3 orange blossom cocktails, which I'm assuming is a screwdriver with a twist, essentially.
Well, it was Fatty Arbuckle's favorite drink. So it was like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's just orange juice and something and something and something. But
yeah,
it was his favorite drink. But I think the point to take away from this is, like, 2 to 3 drinks. Yes, if you're a teetotaler and you never drink, maybe that's a lot for you.
If you're a what?
A teetotaler.
What's that?
It's where you just drink one drink and you're done. Like, a lot of women...
Oh, lightweight. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't know
I've
that
never
term?
No, I've never heard that before. I think you made it up.
I'll ask. It's not. I didn't make it up. I know I have a lot of Southern sayings and then you just shake your head, but I don't even make any of those
Most time I let them go because I didn't think that was even a word. I thought you were just having a stroke.
But the point is like, okay, so if you drink... even occasionally, you can usually have more than one drink and be fine. So 2, maybe even 3 drinks. 2 drinks might be fine. 3 drinks might be pushing it for some people. And that's the point, is like, she's not binge drinking. She's not going crazy. And this is over a number of hours.
Yeah. She's saying that Fatty was more intoxicated than anyone else at the party.
Well, he's already throwing himself out a fucking window.
Right, he's about to throw himself out a window because he's a fucking existential bastard when he's drunk. And actually, Maud admits that she, has 8 or 10 whiskeys while she's at the party. So,
oh, jeez, she's letting people know she can drink.
Virginia here is being the perfect little schoolgirl.
Do not worry, sir. I've had my injection before I came.
I've had my injection.
I know what I'm talking about.
And I had 10 drinks, and she only had 3. And, the coroner had asked how she could recall events so well, from the party after drinking that much.
Bitch, you gotta be drunk.
All right, you lush. How do we know you're true?
That thirsty bitch is alive.
So, yeah, we're dealing with this raging alcoholic at a party who is now drugged up before she's taking the stand. And
What
just
does
kinda,
she say? I'm sure she has a solid reason.
Oh, no. She just responds that her memory was always good.
Oh, good. Just trust me, bitch.
I'm a person of high intelligence. I'm fine. I got this shit. And
Oh, no.
so that's the story of Maud on the stand here before we even go to fucking trial.
That was their strongest testimony.
Yeah, I wanted to see what the other...
And in one fell swoop, she was like, so, I'm a drunk bitch.
I'm drugged right now.
But don't you fucking worry.
I remember
Even on this
everything.
shot, I know what the hell I'm talking about.
So, 2 nurses were put on the stand. Jean Jameson and Vera Cumberland.
Remember last time when Corey couldn't say either one, he said them just as angrily?
Yeah. Nurse Jean Jameson testified that Virginia claimed to have been suffering for 6 weeks with internal trouble. Nurse Cumberland also testifies that Virginia had admitted to her that the relations between Fatty and her were not proper. And both nurses had corroborated that Virginia expressed anxiety that she didn't want Henry Lerman hearing about the events from that day, or from that room.
Dude, that all makes sense, though.
Right, with this with this case,
Okay,
something
I
making
know.
sense is the most bizarre shit here.
So, yes, you don't want Henry... You're hoping Henry and you will get back together, so you don't want him to hear that this awful thing happened, especially because if you're alive right now, who thinks you're dying?
Yeah.
Telling it, like, why did it suddenly come out now? Why did it wait until she died for police to hear that she said this happened?
Yeah. Next up on the stand
Who?
is Al
Al
Sumniker, who is the
Oh.
creepiest motherfucker ever.
Who's already been found holding her clothes, who's already been at meetings with these guys.
Yeah. So, he's telling the jury the events of that night from the party. He claims to only return around the time the assistant manager was called, and that Virginia was naked on a bed.
What? Okay, sorry. So he's been gone an hour? Because remember, he left with the chorus girl.
Yeah, and then
He comes back with the chorus girl. That took an hour, maybe,
to go
a
one block. Yeah, and like I said, it probably takes longer to get to and from the car than it did to drive. But who knows?
He's useless anyways. He's been at the meeting.
Yeah, so, he claims that he returned and found Virginia naked on a bed. According to him, Virginia was not much of a drinker, and he knew that she'd get dizzy around 1 or 2, so she's a lightweight, or whatever the hell word you're using.
Teetotaler.
That. And we mentioned in part 2 of this saga of the story that, Al and Virginia had only met sometime in, the beginning of August. Then they took this weekend away to go at Labor Day to, get her out of the house because she was depressed about the situation with Lerman. So he knew her for about 6 weeks. In that 6 weeks, maybe she hadn't been drinking, or maybe she's trying to get out of her shell and her tolerance is down. But anyway, he's saying that she gets drunk really quick.
Well, I mean, here's the thing that Hollywood elite, again, parties are a thing. The fact that she's been hiding away in a house and she's not been going out to parties is a big deal.
Yeah.
So maybe she is a lightweight right now, but honestly, the fact that she goes to so many parties, it's unlikely 1 or 2 drinks would take her out.
Right, and that's, a big thing. And during his time on stand, they asked him about the clothes, and he admits that he did take her torn clothes. He's like, oh yeah, I thought I'd make a nice dust cloth for my machine, my car.
My machine.
And I guess I feel like that's just
I'm going to start calling everything my machine and see how much it freaks people out.
Where was I? So we were...
Can you hand me my machine? Ugh, what? Why?
At work/school one day, we had the ATV on the beach. And this crazy woman approached us. And she's like, that's a nice machine. I want to get my son one of those.
I want to give my son the machine.
And I'm like, you creepy, creepy lady, go away. And anyway...
She wanted your machine.
I don't know. She's talking to 3 of us.
She wanted all... Okay.
Probably.
Okay, let's go.
Anyway, if you have a friend, even a short-term friend that you're seeing under complete duress and distress, and you're taking their clothes because you want to dry your car, that just seems really fucking weird to me. He also said that Labor Day, the day after Labor Day, he visited Virginia in her hotel room at the St. Francis, and that she had said, Roscoe hurt me. Which again goes back with, Maud's claim that she always called him Roscoe.
It goes with 2 different claims with the chorus girl and Maud saying as soon as the door opened, she said, Roscoe hurt me. Roscoe should be in this room. He should be here every minute.
Ira Fortless, that guy who Roscoe had kicked out of the party real quick.
And brought Virginia there in the first place.
He showed up for this, this grand jury. But since he was asked to leave the party super early, he didn't have much to say, so he got to leave pretty quick. So Alice Blake and Zay Provost, the two chorus girls, they couldn't testify yet, and the prosecution was chastised, but allowed to call them the next day. So we got a lot going on.
Did they ever even find her?
Apparently they know where she is now, because they're able to call her as a witness the next day. Or so we think.
Yeah.
Alice Blake is just a chameleon, and she might actually be the Illuminati. So that same Tuesday that we're going through, these statements, is the same Tuesday that Arbuckle is taken to the Prohibition office. I was going to say probation again because they look the same and prohibition's stupid. But officials had opened an investigation the day before to determine who supplied the alcohol to that party. Remember we had this Canadian whiskey and this moonshine and then bottles of gin that showed up? Yeah.
Either way, they're just trying to fuck the hotel.
Yeah, where did we get this? How'd the hotel get it? Roscoe, he's questioned for nearly an hour, but denied knowledge of any alcohol in his room, despite the fact that they had found 2 whiskey bottles in his wastebasket. His repeated answer about the alcohol was, never had any. Never had any.
So he's a liar.
Yeah.
But, you would too in Prohibition.
Probably.
So at 8 p.m. that evening, D.A. Brady called the grand jury into session and produced witnesses Zay Provost, Alice Blake, so he's found her, and Nurse Grace Halston.
You can find the Illuminati, it's just hard.
So Grace Halston is the nurse who attended the first autopsy.
All right.
By the early hours on Wednesday, the grand jury's decision was that Roscoe Arbuckle would be indicted for the involuntary manslaughter of Virginia Rappe. So a killing done without malice or forethought. So Doctors Strange and Ophuls testified again about their autopsies on Wednesday. So Ophuls stated that only violence of some force could have created Virginia's bladder rupture. And when he's asked to elaborate on a violent cause, he replied, finger pressure. So he's suggesting that fingers were somehow inside and caused the rupture of her bladder. The coroner's inquest jury deliberated at noon, and 3.5 hours later, the verdict was returned and read. Said rupture was caused by the application of some force which, from the evidence submitted, we believe was applied by one Roscoe Arbuckle and by the undersigned jurors, therefore charge the said Roscoe Arbuckle with the crime of manslaughter. We recommend that the District Attorney of the City of San Francisco, in conjunction with the grand jury, the Chief of Police, and the federal prohibition officials, take steps to prevent the reoccurrence of affairs similar to the one in which the young woman lost her life, so that San Francisco shall not be made the rendezvous of the debauchee and the gangsters. They're trying to make a point out of all the rapes and the deaths that's been happening in the town lately, but here's a high-name lady, like an elite star of Hollywood, passing away from basically a rape. And they've been provided enough evidence within the autopsies to say that she died from some force given to her bladder that should not have happened if nobody was touching her. Thursday, Police Chief O'Brien and Captain of Detectives Madison met with D.A. Brady privately. So Friday morning, Brady confidentially announced that, quote, the people are ready to proceed on the murder charges, unquote. In a decision that came just before Friday morning's arraignment, Brady ignored the grand jury's manslaughter complaint and the manslaughter recommendation from the coroner's inquest and proceeded with the initial murder charges.
Ooh.
So,
he's going for blood.
So basically, everybody else wanted to say manslaughter. Yes, he tried to do something awful to her, but he didn't try to kill her. Accidental death. And the DA now has decided that he's going out for blood and he wants to get him for murder.
I like this guy.
Yeah, except for he's all out for himself.
Yeah, but still.
Everybody was stunned. Just as stunned as they were that they didn't get to walk in and walk out after giving $5,000. All of Roscoe's team are just thrown away. DA Dominguez is actually requested a continuance of about 12 days so he can get his shit together before the preliminary hearing. Brady offered, 6.
We'll give you a half of that, but okay.
And so the judge agreed and said 6 days, and he set a court date for the following Thursday, September 22nd at 1 p.m. And then Roscoe Arbuckle was returned to his jail cell.
Play the jailbird.
I feel so... Oh, the world's smallest violin.
Yeah, the world's biggest man inside the world's smallest jail cell.
Oh, with your buddy.
I bet he was getting called Fatty all day.
Yo, Fatty!
He must have hated that shit.
But, yeah, so I'm sorry, you guys. We realized after going through this, like I said, it was about a month's worth of research, and
we keep looking at this thing and being like, oh, we can do that in 2, and then the more and more we pull up all the files and the stack of paper that we have for this.
But we just want you to know everything, because we know it, and because every time I listen to it on somebody else's podcast, there's just one podcast that does it right. That's it. Everyone else calls her a whore. And I want you guys to decide what she is and what he is. Like, I just want to give you that opportunity, and we want to provide all the information. So I'm sorry it's so long. And you can skip all of 10 if you want to. But we're almost there. We're going to do this part, and I promise the next part is it. We're just going to go through the last trials, and then that'll be it. We'll be through.
Yeah, so we're almost done. We're going to close it off on 4.
Hold my hand. I promise. We won't go beyond that.
Yeah, we're not going to go beyond 4 because we want to get through this story as well.
We're not
and get it out to everybody.
Like all those car movies. We promise. We're better than that.
Yeah, we're not Fast and the Furious. It's going to be episode 9 of Fatty Arbuckle. But, no, what we want to do, though, is, we've heard there's so many of these, this situation is such a big story that you'll see those podcasts that are like 3 hours long, and being able to break it up into like smaller increments of like 45 minutes to an hour each is a little bit more digestible.
Yep.
So
again, we're almost there. That is what's going on in the inquest, and it turns out that he's going to trial. They think he's guilty enough, at least, that there's enough evidence that somebody's got to prove that he didn't do this. So the American justice system is working, and we will bring that to you in the following rest of the week.
Yeah, so we'll have this one will get posted, and then hopefully only a few days after that, the final installment of this story will be up. And then we can move to number 11.
So please make sure that you give us some ratings and some input onto our iTunes and let us know how we're doing and what you think. It really makes a difference. It lets people know who we are, and it gets our name out a little bit so more people can listen to us. We're a small indie podcast, and we're doing it all by ourselves, which makes a little more sense, right?
Yeah.
But we love you guys, and we love the input. And what I really love is I read everything you guys send us. So every review, every email, every comment on like Instagram, I read it, I reply to you guys, and I really enjoy it. So if you're following along and you're starting to get a sense of how you're starting to feel about this and you want to talk about it, or any of our other cases that we've talked to you guys about, I want to talk about it. And also, if you just want to give us some recommendations of things you want to hear, that gets me excited too, and I'm all about it. I do too much research. So if there's something you kind of know, but you want to know more about, because it's situation normal, we just forget about it.
We'll see you guys on the next episode so we can finish off the story of Fatty and Virginia Rappe.
See you next time.
Bye.